This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recorded by Annie Coleman in St. Louis, Missouri, in March 2006. The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Chapter 23. Well, all day him and the king was hard at it, rigging up a stage and a curtain and a row of candles for footlights, and that night the house was jam full of men in no time. When the place couldn't hold no more, the Duke, he quit tending door and went around the back way and come on to the stage and stood up before the curtain and made a little speech and praised up this tragedy and said it was the most thrillingest one that ever was. And so he went on a-bragging about the tragedy and about Edmund Kean the elder, which was to play the main principal part in it. And at last, when he'd got everybody's expectations up high enough, he rolled up the curtain, and the next minute the king come a-prancing out on all fours, naked, and he was painted all over, rings streaked and striped all sorts of colors, as splendid as a rainbow. But never mind the rest of his outfit, it was just wild, but it was awful funny. The people most killed themselves laughing, and when the king got done caperin' and capered off behind the scenes, they roared and clapped and stormed and haw-hawed till he come back and done it over again, and after that they made him do it another time. Well, it would make a cow laugh to see the shines that old idiot cut. Then the Duke he lets the curtain down and bows to the people and says the great tragedy will be performed only 2 nights more, on accounts of press and London engagements, where the seats is all sold already for it in Drury Lane. And then he makes them another deep bow and says if he has succeeded in pleasing them and instructing them, he will be deeply obleeged if they will mention it to their friends and get them to come and see it. 20 people sings out, "What, is it over? Is that all?" The Duke says yes. Then there was a fine time. Everybody sings out, "Sold!" and rose up mad and was a-going for that stage and them tragedians. But a big, fine-looking man jumps up on a bench and shouts, "Hold on! Just a word, gentlemen!" They stop to listen. "We are sold, mighty badly sold, but we don't want to be the laughing-stock of this whole town, I reckon, and never hear the last of this thing as long as we live. No! What we want is to go out of here quiet and talk this show up and sell the rest of the town. Then we'll all be in the same boat. Ain't that sensible?" "You bet it is. The judge is right," everybody sings out. "All right, then. Not a word about any sell. Go along home and advise everybody to come and see the tragedy." Next day you couldn't hear nothing around that town but about how splendid that show was. House was jammed again that night, and we sold this crowd the same way. When me and the king and the Duke got home to the raft, we all had a supper, and by about midnight, they made Jim and me back her out and float her down the middle of the river and fetch her in and hide her about 2 miles below town. The third night, the house was crammed again, and they warn't newcomers this time, but people that was at the show the other 2 nights. I stood by the Duke at the door, and I see that every man that went in had his pockets bulgin' or something muffled up under his coat, and I see it weren't no perfumery neither, not by a long sight. I smelt sickly eggs by the barrel and rotten cabbages and such things, and if I know the signs of a dead cat being around, and I bet I do, there was 64 of them went in. I shoved in there for a minute, but it was too various for me. I couldn't stand it. Well, when the place couldn't hold no more people, the Duke, he give a fella a quarter and told him to tend door for a minute, and then he started around for the stage door, I after him. But the minute we turned the corner and was in the dark, he says, "Walk fast now, till you get away from the houses, and then shin for the raft like the dickens was after you." I done it, and he done the same. We struck the raft at the same time, and in less than 2 seconds we was gliding downstream, all dark and still, and edging towards the middle of the river, nobody saying a word. I reckon the poor king was in for a gaudy time of it with the audience, but nothing of the sort. Pretty soon he crawls out from under the wigwam and says, "Well, how'd the old thing pan out this time, Duke?" He hadn't been uptown at all. We never showed a light till we was about 10 mile below the village. Then we lit up and had a supper, and the king and the duke fairly laughed their bones loose over the way they'd served them people. The duke says, "Greenhorns, flatheads, I knew the first house would keep mum and let the rest of the town get roped in, and I knew they'd lay for us the third night, and consider it was their turn now. Well, it is their turn, and I'd give something to know how much they'd take for it. I would just like to know how they're putting in their opportunity. They can turn it into a picnic if they want to. They brought plenty provisions." Them rapscallions took in $465 in that 3 nights. I never seen money hauled in by the wagon load like that before. By and by, when they was sleeping and snoring, Jim says, "Don't it surprise you, the way them kings carries on, Huck?" "No," I says, "it don't." "Why don't it, Huck?" "Well, it don't because it's in the breed. I reckon they're all alike." "But, Huck, these kings of ourn is reg'lar rapscallions. That's just what they is. They's reg'lar rapscallions." "Well, that's what I'm a-sayin'. All kings is mostly rapscallions, as fur as I can make out."